Sometimes you know what you know, and sometimes you know what you don't know, and sometimes, as the Firesign Theater says, everything you know is wrong.
You know that you're wrong, but you fear you're right. You suspect you're out of sync. You think that you're out of your mind. Everything you know is wrong.
The cover of last week's Time magazine caused quite a stir across the country and around the world. It featured 26-year-old Jamie Lynn Grummet breastfeeding her 3-year-old son. Besides heating up the debate on women breastfeeding in public, the cover and article sparked a new debate over what's called attachment parenting, a style of parenting that promotes closeness and emotional availability with the child. For the last week, websites and message boards have lit up with comments from parents who either endorse the technique or find it downright silly. But if you think that attachment parenting is only about a mother breastfeeding her child past the cultural norm, then everything you know about attachment parenting is wrong. Joining me now is Dr. Jim Sears, board-certified pediatrician and co-host of the TV show The Doctors. Dr. Sears, welcome.
Hey, Tom. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for joining us. What is attachment parenting? What are the parenting techniques?
You know, this is it's a parenting technique, and it's the way I was raised. It's the way I raised my kids, and it's the way a lot of parents raise their kids nowadays. You know, 20, 30 years ago, when this first started being a word people talked about, it was, considered really fringe. But now it's, it's much more mainstream. And in my practice, many parents practice at least some of the aspects of attachment parenting. And it's generally, listening to your baby instead of looking at the schedule. It's, trying to read your baby's cues. When they're crying, you pick them up. Breastfeeding instead of formula as much as possible, and then sleeping close to your baby. It's essentially forming a much greater attachment and having a much greater bond with your kids, with your babies. And we found that kids, when they grow up in that kind of a parenting situation, they tend to just be healthier physically, medically, and mentally also. We've seen those kids, they just tend to be more well-adjusted when they're older.
This is the exact opposite of B.F. Skinner's crazy notion where he actually raised his daughter in a box
Right.
and said that parents should not interact with them. But isn't it pretty much, I mean, the worldwide average, the mean for the number of years that parents breastfeed their children is 3.5 years. And in some countries 4 years. So it's apparently not that abnormal. And it seems like what you're describing is the way Aboriginal people interact with their children, indigenous people interact with their children, probably the way humans interacted with their children for the 165,000 years we've been running around this planet. Why is it controversial?
Exactly right, Tom. And I think, a great way to define attachment parenting is if you were somewhere isolated, whether it's a desert island or the middle of a jungle or a desert somewhere, and you didn't have grandparents and mother-in-laws telling you how to raise your kids, you would probably do things by your instinct. If your baby was crying, you would pick them up. If they seemed hungry, you would breastfeed them, and you would probably sleep very close to them, if nothing else, for safety. But in this country, we've kind of gotten away from that, and we've seen, I think as a pediatrician, medically, because American babies aren't breastfed nearly as long as the babies in the rest of the world, I think that's one of the reasons why so many kids are growing into a lot of those chronic diseases, higher rates of asthma, allergies, GI problems, digestive problems, things like that, because they're not getting that breast milk as long as it would
be extraordinary if this could solve all those problems, and hopefully it can. Dr. Bill Sears, I'm sorry we're out of time, but thank you for joining us.
You bet. Thanks, Tom.
Now everything you know about attachment parenting is right.